afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is having a great second day of the conference. It's great to see so many of you here. You've probably seen a slightly different format of the day. Most people love to put up a presentation, give you lots of kind of useless information, and kind of bore you. We're not in university. This isn't a lecture. I'm not here to educate you in that kind of respect. So we're gonna make a deal with each other. I'm gonna talk at you for the next 10, maybe 15 minutes, give you some interesting information. Hope you enjoy it. Hope it's a little bit exciting for you. And in return, you guys are gonna remember me. And if you think of a legal situation that you need a lawyer for in future, maybe you give me a call. With that being said, everything I'm gonna talk about here is from a legal perspective. I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer, so remember that. And for those of you who are thinking that we're going to be talking about something boring, no, I want to talk about something that is very, very interesting, onshore versus offshore jurisdictions. I'm also going to ask the guys at the back if you could reset the clock, because I don't think that's accurate, and it's just kind of flashing at me. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, onshore versus offshore jurisdictions. Look, what is an onshore jurisdiction? Well, it's based around tax. That's it, right? It predicates on tax and it predicates on a number of things. And we actually end up in a situation where onshore versus offshore becomes good guys versus bad guys, right? Those that want to pay tax and those that don't want to pay tax. Hold your thoughts on your personal feelings on tax, because we've all got them. An offshore jurisdiction is a jurisdiction that has limited regulation. Limited regulation doesn't enforce its citizens or companies that are based there to pay tax. That's an offshore jurisdiction. An onshore jurisdiction is the opposite. It's one that's usually heavily regulated, one that requires corporations and individuals to pay tax. That's it at a 10,000-foot level. That's what we're looking at. And so when we talk about where we set up, when we begin any project, that is the fundamental question. Where do we set up? It is probably the number one question I am asked as a crypto lawyer. Where should I issue my token from? Where should I run my company from? Where should my business activities be conducted from? My DAO, my company, my foundation, my everything. It is the number one question that I get asked. And the first question is that I say to everybody, well, how serious are you about your project? And everybody kind of pauses. I'm very serious, it's my dream. But I don't have the money to run off somewhere and get a very expensive license. So we begin the conversation. And I always say to people, if you talk to a lawyer, if you talk to any lawyer, and they say to you, you know, you should set your project up here, or you should set your project up there. When you stand up, I want you to politely punch them and leave their office, because they're talking nonsense. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to any project in this industry. I'm going to say that again. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to any project in this industry. And everybody has this jump-off-a-cliff mentality. Those guys did it, so we're going to do it. These guys did it, so we're going to do it. But that's where they set up, so I think we should do that. It's nonsense. Remember when you were a kid and your mum would go, or maybe this is a British thing, I don't know. And your mum would go, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff too? It's the same thing. Just because those guys set up a company there and are conducting business there, doesn't mean that you should be. And this is where we boil down to the essence of the onshore-offshore piece. Offshore jurisdictions, zero tax, and usually very regulatory flexible. But there is a problem in that. And the problem is image perception. And the image is, it's scammy, it's problematic, it doesn't make us look serious. It creates this wave of emotions for founders. But the juxtaposing view of that is, well, I don't have to pay any taxes. I don't have to abide by any rules. I don't have to pay any taxes. And that's when we enter a real kind of moral dilemma situation. But actually, it goes deeper than that. And I point at DAOs, and I point at FTX as the two examples of this. That's not me being topical. I pointed at FTX before everything happened last week, by the way. When I talk about DAOs, everybody says, excuse me, a few very brave people say, oh, you know what? We have a DAO. We're not registered anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. Wrong answer. For those of you who've heard my prior speeches, you will know that if you think a DAO keeps you out of the crosshairs of the law, or DAO keeps you agnostic to any kind of rules, or a DAO doesn't mean that you have to pay tax, has clearly never heard of something called the cartel. Because if that worked as a legal principle, the cartel would be the best DAO on the planet. Decentralized organization, governance protocols, doesn't exist in one jurisdiction, just happens to deal a lot of narcotics rather than crypto assets. So anybody that's thinking we run a DAO and we're not registered anywhere needs to get that out of their head pretty quick. And this is where we start to look at offshore jurisdictions. My second example, FTX. FTX used both. They used onshore and offshore. They had a presence in the United States, onshore, taxation, regulation, and they had a presence in the Bahamas, offshore, no taxation, minimal regulation. And why did they do that? It was simple. They played both sides of the line. They used an easy regulatory framework that was found in the Bahamas, and they maximized their taxation ability. And they also wanted to be able to operate in a heavy regulatory framework like the US. Yes, for those of you who understand the taxation code of the United States, first of all, you're an incredibly boring person, but I do respect you. Secondly, you will know that there are things like controlled foreign corporations, which is why it doesn't matter. But the point is, if you establish yourself in an offshore jurisdiction with the fundamental belief that the rules don't apply to you, with the fundamental belief that you are never going to pay any tax, then there's a really shocking moment that's coming down the pipeline for you guys. And that's why I break offshore jurisdictions into two needs. The reason people go there is for one reason, but they actually believe that they're doing it for another. You see, the reason people go there is 99% of the time because of taxation. You think, I don't want to pay any tax. It's nasty, it's annoying. My father used to have the philosophy of when they start paying it right, I'll start paying it right. When they start spending it properly, I'll start paying it properly. But that's a long story for another day. Then we ended up in the situation where people moved to these offshore jurisdictions thinking I'll pay no tax, but really what they were doing was they were trying to avoid regulators. I'll go somewhere I won't be found. Sounds pretty cool, right? And as we think of things like MiCA coming into Europe, we think of the Securities Act in the United States, we think of the FCA regulations in the United Kingdom, and this list goes on, these jurisdictions become more and more attractive. And that ethos swing, that mentality swing, that morality swing of should I be offshore and pay no tax and be in a jurisdiction that will kind of give me some more protection against should I be in a domicile that has a taxation regime and a code I could work to becomes your morality question, right? Do I want to be seen as a serious business? Or do I want to be seen as a business that kind of plays within a gray area? And that's the key phrase, isn't it, right? Everybody loves this. Oh, if I had $1 for every time someone said this. We want to be in the gray area. We don't want to be doing anything wrong, but we also don't want to be doing it right, because doing it right is very expensive. Well, if anybody's ever hired anybody, there's a maxim that says, if you think it's expensive to hire somebody good, wait till you hire an idiot. The same is true when you work in this industry. If you think it's expensive to go to a deregulated jurisdiction, or a regulated jurisdiction, excuse me, wait until you end up in a deregulated one. Because regulators globally work together. And people don't think that this happens, but it really does. And you have jurisdictions like the Seychelles that has a no reciprocity law. You have jurisdictions like Belize that makes you put down a $250,000 deposit before you can start a lawsuit. And all of that is aimed at protecting individuals from claims from other individuals. That's great. That is the one thing offshore jurisdictions are fantastic at. I don't want to be sued by the people that I sold tokens to. I don't want to be sued by the people that I sold NFTs to. I don't want to be sued by the people using my platform. And that's where you see this FTX model coming in, right? Set things up in the Bahamas, gives you a nice jurisdiction, stops people from suing you. And it does. That's what offshore jurisdictions are very, very good at. Laws are designed in those countries to stop people from being able to bring progressive legal actions. It's a great protectionism. Why is that in place? Sounds kind of crazy, right? Why is that in place? Because these countries often have nothing else, to offer. Their Companies Act and their legal code is something that enables them to actually entice people to spend money in the country. So, setting it up is like a balancing act. And if we take FTX, where you do a little onshore and you do a little offshore, it works very well, but never believe in the fundamental belief that because you've set up offshore, people won't come for you. There are reciprocity agreements, there are restrictive measures, there are enabling acts, there are extradition treaties in all of these locations. And so that's why I try and educate people when they believe, you know what, we set up here, we set up there. No, an offshore jurisdiction is not an answer. It is not a solution, but it is a tool. And that's why whenever I talk to clients or whenever I talk to anybody about this, I say, look, an offshore jurisdiction is something that you can use as part of your growth strategy, but it is not your answer to everything. So when you build your governance policy, your corporate model, and how your company looks, because again, you as founders, for those of you who are founders out there, if you only have one company in your structure, you are doing it wrong. Why are you doing it wrong? Because you are not maximizing tax advantages, asset protection, management structures. Every major corporation in the world does this. Every major corporation in the world does this. Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they do not just have one company in one location, and they ain't doing it to service clients in other locations. Let's be clear. So when we talk about onshore versus offshore jurisdiction, the battle that is encountered between the two isn't about do they fight each other, it's about how they work together. And you as business owners, as founders, as operators, and I encourage everybody to do this, is to educate yourself tonight on 5 bizarre and beautiful offshore jurisdictions and see how it will benefit you. Then learn the pitfalls, then learn the problems with it. And once you've done that, you'll understand more about how to branch out there safely, and you'll understand about the business considerations needed to use it or maybe not use it. But what I do say as an overarching message is this: do not believe that an offshore jurisdiction will protect you. Do not believe that an offshore jurisdiction is the answer, but use an offshore jurisdiction as a tool in your arsenal as a business owner. And if anybody's got any more questions about that, you can feel free to grab me after this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for listening. I trust that was all a little informative for everybody. That's all the time I've got. Give it a round of applause.